Senator Cruz, you are a first-term senator as well. Your opponents say you, like Senator Rubio, are not prepared to be commander-in-chief. You have talked tough about threats we face in the Mideast. It was reported just moments ago that the North Koreans test-launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. North Korea has nuclear weapons and conducted another nuclear test just last month. The missile that was launched is the kind the North Koreans hope could someday carry a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the United States. How would you respond if commander-in-chief to that launch?
Well, I would note initially the fact that we're seeing the launch, and we're seeing the launch from a nuclear North Korea, is the direct result of the failures of the first Clinton administration. The Clinton administration led the world in relaxing sanctions against North Korea. Billions of dollars flowed into North Korea in exchange for promises not to build nuclear weapons. They took those billions and built nuclear weapons. And I would note also the lead negotiator in that failed North Korea sanctions deal was a woman named Wendy Sherman, who Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton promptly recruited to come back to be the lead negotiator with Iran. So what we are seeing with North Korea is foreshadowing of where we will be with Iran. With respect to North Korea and what we should do now, one of the first things we should do is expand our missile defense capacity. We ought to put missile defense interceptors in South Korea. South Korea wants them. And one of the real risks of this launch, North Korea wants to launch a satellite. And one of the greatest risks of the satellite is they would place a nuclear device in the satellite as they would orbit around the Earth, and as it got over the United States, they would detonate that nuclear weapon and set off what's called an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, which could take down the entire electrical grid on the eastern seaboard, potentially killing millions. We need to harden the grid to defend ourselves, and we need missile defense to protect ourselves against North Korea.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were commander-in-chief tonight, would you have ordered the U.S. military to destroy that missile preemptively on the launch pad to prevent North Korea from becoming an even graver threat?
You know, at this point, I'm not going to speculate on that without the intelligence briefing that any commander-in-chief would have, knowing what exactly is there. One of the real problems...
Senator Cruz, let me tell you this. You have talked tough about the Mideast. You haven't gotten those intelligence briefings about that. Why not tell us whether you would preemptively strike a missile on a launch pad that threatens the U.S.?
Actually, with respect, I have gotten the intelligence briefings on the Mideast. Those have been going on for many years. I haven't gotten the intelligence briefing tonight on what North Korea is doing because I'm here in New Hampshire. And when you're responding to an immediate incident, you need to know the intelligence of what's occurring. But what I was saying, look, it is qualitatively different dealing with a country once they have nuclear weapons. It's why you prevent them from getting nuclear weapons in the first place, because your hands are somewhat tied once they have nukes. It's why this Iranian nuclear deal is so catastrophic, and it's why I pledged on the very first day in office to rip to shreds this Iranian nuclear deal, so we're not sitting here in 5 years wondering what to do about an Iranian missile launch when they have nuclear weapons. The stakes are too high for that.
Okay, Senator Cruz, I will say that missile has been sitting there for quite some time, and they have had eyes on it.
Martha, just to clarify on that point, because he's right, and one more thing to point, it is standard procedure of the United States to shoot down those missiles once launched if they pose a threat to civilians, land, or ships.
Senator Rubio, I'm talking about a preemptive strike on the launch pad.
No, I understand, and but I think it's important to note that it is, and Senator Cruz, I think, was alluding to this as well, it is the standard procedure of the United States, if in fact those missiles pose a threat to land, civilians, our allies, or any of our assets, to shoot down that missile in mid-flight. I understand your question was about a preemptive strike, but my point is that there is in place now contingencies to avoid any sort of that strike from going errant and destroying any assets of the United States or implicating or hurting any of our allies or any of our assets in the region.
Okay, thank you, Senator Rubio. Governor Kasich, how would you respond to tonight's launch?
Well, we've got to step up the pressure. And by the way, I've got to say, after being here, every one of my 100 town hall meetings in New Hampshire were a lot more fun than what I saw here today. We're so much more positive. Look, in terms of North Korea, Martha, we have to make sure that we intercept both the ships and their aircraft, because what they're trying to do is to proliferate this very dangerous material along with the technology, the instruments that can be used for mass destruction. That's what I worry about the most, frankly, is non-state actors, people who don't have a uniform, people who don't have a country, who can spread this, who are not subject to the mutual assured defense. In other words, you strike us, we strike you. Some of these radicals, they don't care about that. That's what I worry about for my children and for their children going forward. So we have to be very tough, and we should tell the Chinese, look, if you're not going to do this, ballistic missile defense to Koreans, ballistic missile defense to Japan, and by the way, we should impose the same kind of sanctions on North Korea that we imposed on Iran, because they're able to shift money. They're able to send money and receive money. We've got to be very tough on this, and frankly, I think we could have let the Japanese know that if you want to take action on that missile that's rising, you want to take action, you will have our support if that's what you think is the best thing to do. We cannot continue to be weak in the face of the North Koreans, or frankly, in the entire rest of the world.
Martha, this relates to strategic patience.
I'll get to you in a moment.
This relates to the strategic patience of the Obama administration. They come up with these great marketing terms, and what they do is they pull back, and voids are filled, and they're now filled by asymmetric threats of terror as well as nation states on the run. The next president of the United States is going to have to get the United States back in the game, and if a preemptive strike is necessary to keep us safe, then we should do it.
Thank you, Governor Bush. Mr. Trump, do you have a red line with North Korea? Would you consider military action, and how far would you let them go?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, Marco said earlier on that President Obama knows exactly what he's doing, like we have this president that really knows. I disagree respectfully with Marco. I think we have a president who, as a president, is totally incompetent, and he doesn't know what he's doing. I think he has no idea what he's doing, and our country is going to hell. So I just want to say we disagree on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, I got mentioned. Can I respond?
And I'd like you to finish the question, please.
As to North Korea, we have has been just sucked out of our country by China. China says they don't have that good a control over North Korea. They have tremendous control. I deal with the Chinese all of the time. I do tremendous business. The largest bank in the world is in one of my buildings in Manhattan. I deal with them. They tell me they have total, absolute control, practically, of North Korea. They are sucking trillions of dollars out of our country. They're rebuilding China with the money they take out of our country. I would get on with China. Let China solve that problem. They can do it quickly and surgically. That's what we should do with North Korea.
Senator Rubio, you were mentioned.
Here's the broader point as well, and I think it touches on what Donald just mentioned. Barack Obama views America as this arrogant global power that needed to be cut down to size, okay? This is a president that views this country as a country that's been too powerful in the world, and we create problems around the world. For example, it's one of the reasons why he has betrayed Israel, because he believes if we create separation from Israel, it will help our relations in the Islamic world. The same is happening in the Asia-Pacific region with accommodations to North Korea. North Koreans should be back on the list of terrorist nations, as an example. And Donald's absolutely right. China does have a lot of influence over North Korea, and he should be leveraging our relationship with the Chinese to ensure that North Korea no longer has access to the resources that have allowed him to, a country that has no economy, to develop long-range missiles already capable of reaching the west coast of the United States potentially.
Mr. Trump.
That's because he got Ben Carson's votes, by the way, but we won't say. Our country that we love so much doesn't win anymore. We don't win with the military. We don't win on the border. You look at New Hampshire with the tremendous problem we have with heroin. Number one thing I hear from the people of New Hampshire, who I love and develop such relationships. We don't win with health care. We don't win with trade. You look at what other countries are doing to us, China, everyone. They're killing us on trade. If I'm elected president, we will win, and we will win, and we will win. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trump, Senator Rubio, thank you. We want to turn to health care in this country, and for that, author and commentator Mary Catherine Ham tonight. Mary Catherine?
Thanks, David. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Mr. Trump.
Yes.
In the Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton has criticized Bernie Sanders' plan for single-payer government health care, noting it would require big, across-the-board tax increases for Americans. In doing so, she's doubling down on Obamacare, despite its persistent unpopularity. Mr. Trump, you have said you want to repeal Obamacare. You've also said, quote, everybody's got to be covered, adding, quote, "the government's going to pay for it." Are you closer to Bernie Sanders' vision for health care than Hillary Clinton is?
I don't think I am. I think I'm closer to common sense. We are going to repeal Obamacare. We are going to repeal Obamacare. We are going to replace Obamacare with something so much better. And there are so many examples of it. And I will tell you, part of the reason we have some people laughing because you have insurance people that take care of everybody up here. I'm a self-funder. The only one they're not taking care of is me. We have our lines around each state. The insurance companies are getting rich on Obamacare. The insurance companies are getting rich on health care and health services and everything having to do with health. We're going to end that. We're going to take out the artificial boundaries, the artificial lines. We're going to get a plan where people compete, free enterprise, they compete so much better. In addition to that, you have the health care savings plans, which are excellent. What I do say is there will be a certain number of people that will be on the street dying. And as a Republican, I don't want that to happen. We're going to take care of people that are dying on the street because there will be a group of people that are not going to be able to even think in terms of private or anything else. And we're going to take care of those people. And I think everybody on this stage would have to agree, you're not going to let people die sitting in the middle of a street in any city in this country.
Senator Cruz, to that point, Mr. Trump has said that your position on health care means that maybe you've got, quote, no heart. There is a question here, though, about uncovered folks. You suggested repealing and replacing Obamacare. As we learned with President Obama's broken promise that everyone could keep their plan, any major change in health care policy carries with it the risk that some people will lose their insurance coverage or have to change it. How do you reassure those people that repealing and replacing Obamacare is still in their best interest?
Well, let me take two different parts of that. Let me start with socialized medicine. Socialized medicine is a disaster. It does not work. If you look at the countries that have imposed socialized medicine, that have put the government in charge of providing medicine, what inevitably happens is rationing. You have a scarcity of doctors, you have rationing, and that means the elderly are told, we're going to ration a hip replacement, we're going to ration a knee replacement, we're going to ration end-of-life care. We're right now heading into a medical system with about a 90,000 doctor shortage in America, and socialized medicine, whether proposed by the Democrats or proposed by a Republican, would hurt the people of this country. What should we do on health care? If I'm elected president, we will repeal every word of Obamacare. And once we do that, we will adopt common sense reforms. Number one, we'll allow people to purchase health insurance across state lines that will drive down prices and expand the availability of low-cost catastrophic insurance. We'll expand health savings accounts, and we will de-link health insurance from employment so that you don't lose your health insurance when you lose your job. And that way, health insurance can be personal, portable, and affordable, and we keep government from getting in between us and our doctors.
Dr. Carson, you have some experience with this matter. In the past, you have said that Obamacare should be replaced before it's repealed. How and why?
Well, thank you. I was hoping to get a chance to talk about North Korea. I was the only one who didn't get to do that, and I got some stuff to say about it, let me tell you. But at any rate, you have to replace it with something that makes sense. It doesn't make sense. And the reason that I dislike Obamacare is because the government comes in and it tells the people, which the nation is supposed to be centered on, that we don't care what you think. This is what we're doing. If you don't like it, too bad. That's a problem. And we can't afford to do that because that will fundamentally change America. I have proposed a health empowerment account system. Everybody gets a health empowerment account the day they are born. They keep it until they die. They can pass it on. We pay for it with the same dollars that we pay for traditional health care with, recognizing that we spend twice as much as many countries per capita on health care and don't have as much access. We give people the ability to shift money within their health empowerment account so that each family basically becomes its own insurance company without a middleman. That saves you an awful lot of money. And that will lower the cost of your catastrophic insurance tremendously because the only thing coming out of that is catastrophic health care. And then in terms of taking care of the indigent, we have another whole system, and I can go ahead and explain it. but I don't have the time. But I'd be happy to if you give me some more time. But go to my website, bencarson.com, read about it. You can read about everything that's been discussed here in great detail.
We want to turn to race in America and Mr. Trump. There are many who argue cell phones and smartphones are just now exposing what's been happening in this country for years, cases of excessive force against minorities. As you know, Mr. Trump, on the other side, the FBI director recently said there's a chill wind blowing through law enforcement because of increased scrutiny. You have said police are the most mistreated people in America. As president, how do you bridge the divide?
Well, there is a divide, but I have to say that the police are absolutely mistreated and misunderstood. And if there is an incident, whether it's a incident done purposely, which is a horror, and you should really take very strong action, or if it's a mistake, it's on your newscasts all night, all week, all month, and it never ends. The police in this country have done an unbelievable job of keeping law and order, and they're afraid for their jobs. They're afraid of the mistreatment they get. And I'm telling you that not only me speaking, minorities all over the country, they respect the police of this country, and we have to give them more respect. They can't act. They can't act. They're afraid for losing their pension, their job. They don't know what to do. And I deal with them all the time. We have to give great respect, far greater than we are right now, to our really fantastic police.
Great. Mr. Trump, I did ask about bridging the divide, though, as president. So what would you say to the American families who say, we have lived through this, we have seen excessive force? What would you say to those?
Well, they do, and, you know, they sue. Everybody sues, right? They see excessive, I mean, they go out, they sue. We have so much litigation. I see the courts. I see what they're doing. They sue, and you know what? We don't want excessive force. But at what point? You know, either you're going to have a police force that can do its job. I was just up in Manchester. I met with the police officers yesterday. Tremendous people. They love the area. They love the people. They love all the people. They want to do their job. And you're going to have abuse, and you're going to have problems, and you got to solve the problems, and you have to weed out the problems. But the police in this country are absolutely amazing people.
Mr.
David,
Trump, thank
David,
you. I do want to ask Governor Kasich.
I wanted to say, look, there can be a win-win here. I have formed a collaborative between police and community leaders because people have to respect law enforcement. A family doesn't want dad or mom going home in a box. And for our community leaders, many of them think the system not only works, not only doesn't work for them, but it works against them. And I created a big collaborative in Ohio made up of law enforcement, community leaders, the head of my public safety, and a former Democrat, liberal State Senator Nina Turner run it. They got together, they made recommendations on recruiting, on hiring, on the use of deadly force, and what we're about to do is to bring community and police together so we can have a win-win. We need more win-wins in America, and we don't have to pick one over another or divide. We love the police, but we've got to be responsive to the people in the communities.
Governor,
we have to do all of it.
Senator Rubio, I want to ask you next. President Obama visited a mosque this week in America for the first time in his presidency. President George W. Bush visited a mosque after September 11th. You said of President Obama, quote, he's always pitting people against each other. So I'm curious, how are the two visits different, and would you visit a mosque as president?
I would, but that's not the issue. My problem with what he did is he continues to put out this fiction that there's widespread, systematic discrimination against Muslim Americans. First of all, let's recognize this. If you go to a national cemetery in this country, you will see stars of David and crosses, but you'll also see crescent moons. There are brave men and women who happen to be Muslim Americans who are serving this country in uniform and who have died in the service of this country. And we recognize that and we honor that. But by the same token, we face a very significant threat of homegrown violent extremism. We need to have strong, positive relationships in the Islamic communities in this country so they will identify and report this activity, especially mosques, for example, that are participating not just in hate speech, but in inciting violence and in taking acts against us. And I do believe it is important also to recognize, you want to talk about religious discrimination in America. Well, I don't think Barack Obama is being sued by any Islamic groups, but he is being sued by the Little Sisters of the Poor. We are facing in this country Christian groups and groups that hold traditional values who feel and in fact are being discriminated against by the laws of this country that try to force them to violate their conscience.
Senator Rubio. Thank you. Senator Rubio.
Thank you. You know, this week I had the great pleasure of having my kids join me on the campaign trail. I hadn't seen them in a while. And it was great to have them alongside me, but the most important part of it is that it once again reminded me of what's at stake here in New Hampshire. in less than 72 hours. We are literally deciding what kind of country we will be like when they're my age, what kind of country they will be able to raise their families in. And that's why I'm asking you for your vote. You vote for me, and we will unite this party. We will grow the conservative movement. We will defeat Hillary Clinton, and we will leave our children what our parents left us, the single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. Thank you.
Dr. Carson, on the day of the Iowa caucuses, the Cruz campaign sent out messages and voicemails saying, quote, breaking news, Dr. Ben Carson will be planning to suspend his campaign following tonight's caucuses. Please inform any Carson caucus goers of this news. But as we can all see, you're still standing here tonight. Late this week, your campaign sent this email, quote, this kind of deceitful behavior is why the American people don't trust politicians. If Senator Cruz does not act, then he clearly represents D.C. values. What kind of action do you think Senator Cruz should take?
Well, you know, when I wasn't introduced number 2, as was the plan, I thought maybe he thought I already had dropped out. But you know, today is the 105th anniversary, or 105th birthday of Ronald Reagan. His 11th commandment was not to speak ill of another Republican. So I'm not going to use this opportunity to savage the reputation of Senator Cruz. But I will say, I will say that I was very disappointed that members of his team thought so little of me, that they thought that after having hundreds, if not thousands of volunteers and college students who sacrificed their time and were dedicated to the cause, one even died, to think that I would just walk away 10 minutes before the caucus and say, forget about you guys. I mean, who would do something like that? No, I don't think anyone on this stage would do something like that. And to assume that someone would, what does that tell you? So, unfortunately, it did happen. It gives us a very good example of certain types of Washington ethics. Washington ethics basically says, if it's legal, you do what you need to do in order to win. That's not my ethics. My ethics is you do what's right.
Senator Cruz. Dr. Carson, thank you. Senator Cruz, you have said that Dr. Carson and his wife have become friends of yours. I'm curious why you didn't call ahead of time to either the doctor or his wife, or have your campaign check in with the other campaign before sending out those messages.
Ben is a good and honorable man, and Ben and Candy have become friends. He has an amazing life story that has inspired millions, including me. When this transpired, I apologized to him then, and I do so now. Ben, I'm sorry. Let me tell you the facts of what occurred for those who are interested in knowing. On Monday night, about 6:30 p.m., CNN reported that Ben was not going from Iowa to New Hampshire or South Carolina. Rather, he was, quote, taking a break from campaigning. They reported that on television. CNN's political anchors, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash and Wolf Blitzer, said it was highly unusual and highly significant. My political team saw CNN's report breaking news, and they forwarded that news to our volunteers. It was being covered on live television. Now, at the time, I was at the caucuses. I was getting ready to speak at the caucuses, just like Ben was, just like everyone else was. I knew nothing about this. A couple hours later, I found out about it. I was told that Ben was unhappy. I called him that evening because I respect him very, very highly. I didn't reach him that evening. I reached him the next day and apologized. He asked me then, he said, Ted, would you make this apology in public? I said, yes, I will. And I did so. I regret that subsequently, CNN reported on that. They didn't correct that story until 9:15 that night. So from 6:30 p.m. to 9:15, that's what CNN was reporting. Subsequent to that initial report, Ben's campaign put out a statement saying that he was not suspending his campaign. I wish that our campaign staff had forwarded that statement. They were unaware of it. I wish that they had. That's why I apologized.
Senator Cruz, thank you. We're going to move on here, back to the issues.
Since I was mentioned.
Dr. Carson, please.
This is great. You guys, I want you to all mention me when you say something. In fact, the timeline indicates that that initial tweet from CNN was followed by another one within 1 minute that clarified that I was not dropping out. So what happened to that one, it is unclear. But the bottom line is we can see what happened, everybody can see what happened, and you can make your own judgment.
Dr. Carson,
based on
I want to move on to the military. Senator Rubio, all restrictions on women in combat have been lifted as long as they qualify, positions including special operations forces like Navy SEALs. Just this week, the military leaders of the Army and Marine Corps said that they believe young women, just as young men are required to do, should sign up for selective service in case the draft is reinstated. Many of you have young daughters. Senator Rubio, should young women be required to sign up for selective service in case of a national emergency?
Well, first, let me say there are already women today serving in roles that are like combat, that in fact, whose lives are in very serious danger. And so I have no problem whatsoever with people of either gender serving in combat, so long as the minimum requirements necessary to do the job are not compromised. But I support that. And obviously, if now that that is the case, I do believe that selective service should be opened up for both men and women in case a draft is ever instituted. I think the more fundamental challenge we're now facing is what's happening to the U.S. military. I've said this many times already, and I think it's important to start paying attention to this. Our Air Force is about to be the smallest it's been in 100 years. I'm sorry, in our history. Our Army is set to be smaller than it's been since the Second World War, and our Navy is about to be the smallest than it's been in 100 years. I think we need to begin to refocus on rebuilding our military, because every time we have cut our military in the history of this country, we have had to come back later and rebuild it, and it costs more, and it's a lot more chaotic and dangerous. When I'm president, we are rebuilding the U.S. military.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. Governor Bush, do you believe that young women...
Say it again.
Do you believe young women should sign up for selective service, be required to do so?
I do. And I think that we should not impose any kind of political agenda on the military. There should be, if women can meet the requirements, the minimum requirements for combat service, they ought to have the right to do it, for sure. It ought to be focused on the morale as well. We ought to make sure that we have readiness much higher than we do today. We need to eliminate the sequester, which is devastating our military. We can't be focusing on the political side of this. We need to realize that our military force is how we project our word in the world. When we are weak militarily, it doesn't matter what we say. We can talk about red lines and ISIS being the JV team and reset buttons and all this. If we don't have a strong military, then no one fears us, and they take actions that are against our national interests.
Tell me what you'd say to American people out there who are sitting at home, who have daughters, who might worry about those answers and might worry that the draft is reinstituted.
Well, the draft's not going to be reinstituted, but why, if women are accessing...
Should you just do away with it?
No, I didn't say that. You asked the question not about the draft. You asked about registering. And if women are going to be supporting...
For the draft.
But we don't have a draft. I'm not suggesting we have a draft. What I'm suggesting is that we ought to have readiness being the first priority of our military, and secondly, that we make sure that the morale is high. And right now, neither one of those are acceptable because we've been gutting the military budget. We also need to reform our procurement process. We need to make sure that there are more men and women in uniform than civilians in our Defense Department. There's a lot of things that we need to do reform to bring our defense capabilities into the 21st century, and I'm the guy that could do that. That's why I have the support of generals, of admirals, of 12 Medal of Honor recipients, and many other people that know that I would be a steady commander-in-chief and rebuild our military.
Martha.
Thank you very much.
Can I be really clear on this, because I am the father of 2 daughters. One of them's here tonight. What my wife and I have taught our daughters right from the beginning, that their sense of self-worth, their sense of value, their sense of what they want to do with their life comes not from the outside, but comes from within. And if a young woman in this country wants to go and fight to defend her country, she'd be permitted to do so. And part of that also needs to be a part of a greater effort in this country. And so there's no reason why one young woman should be discriminated against from registering for the selective service. The fact is, we need to be a party and a people that makes sure that our women in this country understand anything they can dream, anything that they want to aspire to, they can do. That's the way we raise our daughters, and that's what we should aspire to as president for all the women in our country.
Thank you very much, Governor Christie.
Can I say something?
We've just covered, wait 1 second, Dr.
Something
Carson.
about the draft, just very quickly.
Very quickly.
14% decrease in the number of people applying for voluntary military service. And I think part of it is because of the way that we treat our veterans. We wouldn't be a free country if it wasn't for them. And we have 22 veterans per day committing suicide. So I think what we should do is have an external support system for people once they volunteer, and it should follow them throughout their career. They should follow them for 3 years or 5 years afterwards. A year before they get out, it should be working on integrating them back into society so that they quit on Friday and they start their new job. They should have health empowerment accounts that are subsidized so they can go to any medical facility and be taken care of. They can go to a VA if they want to. But if we start taking care of our veterans the right way, we won't have to ever worry about a draft again.
Thank you very much for bringing up that subject, Dr. Carson, of our veterans. And for another question about our veterans, we go back to Josh McKelvin from WMUR. Josh?
Thank you, Martha. None of you on stage tonight have ever worn a uniform as a member of the armed service. That's the reality of it, but as a commander-in-chief, you'll also be charged with the care of 23 million active duty service members and veterans in this country. Some have suggested privatizing the VA as a way to enhance care and increase the quality of the care and access. Others say that veterans should carry ID cards that would allow them access to any hospital or healthcare provider. Governor Bush, what specifically would you do to ensure that those who have sacrificed for us are cared for?
I totally agree that we need to give veterans more choices. A veteran's card to be able to go to a private provider will enhance the quality of the service inside the Department of Veterans Affairs. We need career civil service reform. Only 3 people were fired after waiting lists were dropped where veterans didn't get care, and people died. It is outrageous. And Hillary Clinton says that that's acceptable because she is captive of the public service unions. Career civil service reform would allow the next president to fire people that are just showing sheer incompetence. At a town hall meeting today, someone told the story of their father, who looked like he was 85. He got a bill 8 years later from an operation he had. 8 years it took. They couldn't resolve the dispute. And then he was told that he died. Literally, the Veterans Administration sent a death certificate to this guy, and it took 9 months to clarify the guy. I met him, and he's voting for me, and he is likely to be alive. This is outrageous. It is completely outrageous. So giving veterans more choices, creating centers of excellence, focusing on the true problems that exist. Dr. Carson is completely right. We need to start focusing on this earlier, before they become veterans, so that there's a customized plan so people don't fall through the cracks. We can do this, but it's going to require someone who has proven leadership skills to make it happen.
Governor Kasich, do you have a favorite approach?
Josh, I mean, clearly, when a veteran comes home, they should get health care anywhere they want to go. In our state, which is what we should do in the country, if they drive a truck from Kabul to Kandahar in Afghanistan, we say you can drive a truck from Columbus to Cleveland and we don't have to go get a license. We're going to hand you one. And if you got expertise in the military, we're going to give you college credit or community college credit for the things that you did for our country. And in addition to that, I'll tell you one of the biggest things I think has to be done, and I would do it as president. The Pentagon has got to work with the returning soldier, sailor, along with the family, and they're the most valuable employees in the country. I call them golden employees. Everybody wants to hire a veteran, but there is a disconnect between the job openings and the veteran when the veteran comes back. The veteran is a leader, the veteran is strong, the veteran is drug-free. There should be no unemployment among veterans, and if the Pentagon will work with the veteran services agencies all across this country, Josh, we can get people jobs, and we can get them jobs quickly, get them their health care, get them their college education. Let's lift them. They're the greatest people defending the United States of America, and we need to take care of them, and we will. We will.
Senator Rubio, go ahead. Yeah. Well, my brother's a veteran. We're very proud of him in our family. He served as a Green Beret in the 7th Special Forces from 1968 through 1971. And as part of his training, he jumped out of an airplane and he lost his 2 front teeth. And for years, he's had to go to get these dental claims. And every time he goes to get one of these dental claims filled, the VA asks him, well, how do we know you lost your teeth in the Army? And he says, well, it's the only time I ever jumped out of a plane. But he's had to fight through this process, and I've watched it firsthand. That's why I'm proud that I worked in a bipartisan way. We passed the VA accountability bill that for the first time allows us to fire, allows the VA secretary to fire someone who's not doing a good job, who's a senior executive. And the governor's right, they've only fired 3 people up to now. More people will be fired if I'm president. But the portability part of it is incredibly important. Veterans should be able to take their VA benefits to any hospital or any doctor they want to go to. When I am president of the United States, veterans will be able to take their benefits to any hospital or any doctor that they choose.
Senator Rubio.
Senator Cruz.
You know, every candidate running for president says they will stand up to Washington. The natural follow-up question is, when have you ever stood up to Washington? Last week, we saw a powerful illustration of that. I campaigned in the state of Iowa foursquare against the ethanol mandate, something everyone said was political suicide. My 2 leading competitors both attacked me for it. The governor of the state said vote for anyone but Cruz, and lobbyists spent millions of dollars in attack ads. But I stood and said we should have no mandates, a level playing field, and the people of Iowa put country and our children above the cronyism and corporate welfare. We can turn this country around if we get back to the Constitution, and I will always stand with the American people against the bipartisan corruption of Washington.
Thank you. That heroin overdose is now the 2nd leading cause of death in this state. You don't need me to tell you that. But there's another number. 48% of the people here in this state know someone who has abused heroin. Josh, who covers this for WMUR, has the next question.
You're all aware, candidates, that this is a major problem here in New Hampshire. It's a very deadly problem as well. Last month, New Hampshire Senators Kelly Ayotte, Republican, and Jeanne Shaheen, Democrat, they went down to Washington along with the police chief of the state's largest city to testify before the Judiciary Committee in D.C. Senator Cruz, you're a member of that committee. Your campaign schedule didn't allow you to attend this. Even so, the police chief called your absence outrageous, given the severity of the problem. Last week, though, you told a personal story of a close family member struggle with addiction. What can you say to law enforcement right now to convince them that you understand the severity of this problem and you're not just saying what people want to hear days before the primary?
Well, Josh, as you noted, this is a problem that, for me, I understand firsthand. My older sister, Miriam, who was my half-sister, struggled her whole life with drug and alcohol addiction. My father and her mom divorced when she was a little girl, and she was angry her whole life. And she ended up marrying a man who'd been in and out of jail. She then became a single mom, and she herself went to jail several times, and she ended up spending some time in a crack house. I still remember my father and me driving up to get Miriam out of that crack house to try to convince her she needed to be a mom to my nephew Joey. She wasn't willing to listen. She was not willing to change the path she was on. She was angry. I had just gotten my first job coming out of law school. I took a $20,000 loan on a credit card to put my nephew Joey in Valley Forge Military Academy. He was in 6th grade at the time, to pay his way through that. And about 5-6 years ago, Miriam died of an overdose. It was, the coroner ruled it accidental. We don't know. She went to sleep one night, had taken too many pills, and Joey walked in and found her dead. This is an absolute epidemic. We need leadership to solve it. Solving it has to occur at the state and local level with programs like AA and counseling and churches and charities, but it also has to occur securing the borders, because you've got Mexican cartels that are smuggling vast amounts of heroin into this country. We know how to secure the borders. What is missing is the political will to do it. And as president, I will secure the border. We will end this deluge of drugs that is flowing over our southern border and that is killing Americans across this country.
Governor Christie, you've talked a lot about this issue here in New Hampshire, state reforms, criminal justice reforms, access to treatment. To Senator Cruz's point, let's take it a step further. Would you be willing to engage in cross-border enforcement into Mexico, the place where law enforcement here in New Hampshire has traced a lot of this supply back to? would you engage in cross-border enforcement without the cooperation of the Mexican government?
Of course I would. As a former United States attorney who spent 7 years of my life fighting this on the streets of my state, I would do that. But we need to do more, and let me tell you what we've done in New Jersey, Josh. We're working with the folks in New Hampshire in their legislature right now to show them how we're helping to solve this problem in New Jersey. Not just for this campaign. 3 years ago, I proposed a law that we signed into effect, which said that anyone who is a nonviolent, non-dealing, first-time drug offender no longer goes to prison in New Jersey. They go to mandatory inpatient drug treatment. What's happened is crime has gone down 20% in those 3 years. The prison population has gone down 10%. We've now closed the state prison, and we're turning into a drug rehabilitation facility so people can get the tools they need. Listen, everyone out there knows this in New Hampshire. This is a disease. It's not a moral failing. It's a disease, and we need to give people the treatment they need. And let me tell you why. Because I'm pro-life. And I'm pro-life not just for the 9 months in the womb. I'm pro-life for when they get out, and it's a lot more complicated. 16-year-old heroin-addicted drug girl on the floor of the county lockup. I'm pro-life for her life. The 42-year-old lawyer who's taking OxyContin and can't get out of bed and support his family. I'm pro-life for his life. Every one of those lives is an individual gift from God. And the last thing is this. These efforts we've taken over the last 3 years, 2015 in New Jersey, for the first time in 4 years, drug overdose deaths have gone down, not up. I'll bring the same solutions to the country.
Governor Christie from the floor. Thanks very much. Dave Martha, back to you.
Thank you, Governor Christie.
Senator Rubio, I want to stay on the issue of readiness to be president and experience, and questions about you being a first-term senator. Governor Christie warning voters here in New Hampshire against voting for another first-term senator, as America did with Barack Obama in 2008, arguing that you are, quote, not ready to be president of the United States. And Senator Santorum, who we all know dropped out of the race just this week and endorsed you, had a hard time when asked on national television listing your accomplishments as senator. Tonight, what are your accomplishments in the Senate that demonstrate you're ready to be president of the United States?
Well, let me say, from protecting the people of Florida from eminent domain abuse, to bringing accountability to the VA, to the Girls Count Act, to sanctioning terrorist groups, I'm proud of my service in the United States Senate and before that in the Florida legislature. I will say, if politics becomes, and the presidency becomes about electing the people who have been in Congress or in the Senate the longest, we should all rally around Joe Biden. He's been around 1,000 years. He's passed hundreds of bills, and I don't think any of us believe Joe Biden should be president of the United States. And let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. Barack Obama is undertaking a systematic effort to change this country, to make America more like the rest of the world. That's why he passed Obamacare and the stimulus and Dodd-Frank and a deal with Iran. It is a systematic effort to change America. When I'm president of the United States, we are going to re-embrace all the things that made America the greatest nation in the world, and we are going to leave our children what they deserve, the single greatest nation in the history of the world.
Senator Rubio, thank you. I do want to ask Governor Christie. Governor Christie, you said, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, when it comes to electing a first-term senator. You heard Senator Rubio make the case that he does have the experience. Your response?
Sure. First, let's remember something. Every morning when a United States senator wakes up, they think about what kind of speech can I give or what kind of bill can I drop. Every morning when I wake up, I think about what kind of problem do I need to solve for the people who actually elected me. It's a different experience. It's a much different experience. And the fact is, Marco, you shouldn't compare yourself to Joe Biden, and you shouldn't say that that's what we're doing. Here's exactly what we're doing. You have not been involved in a consequential decision where you had to be held accountable. You just simply haven't. And the fact is, when you talk about Hezbollah Sanctions Act that you list as one of your accomplishments and just did, you weren't even there to vote for it. That's not leadership, that's truancy. The fact is that what we need to have in this country is not to make the same mistake we made 8 years ago. Fact is, it does matter when you have to make decisions and be held accountable for them. It does matter when the challenges don't come on a list of a piece of paper of what to vote yes or no every day, but when the problems come in from the people that you serve. I like Marco Rubio, and he's a smart person and a good guy, but he simply does not have the experience to be president of the United States and make these decisions. We've watched it happen, everybody. For the last 7 years, the people of New Hampshire are smart. Do not make the same mistake again.
If I may respond,
thank you.
I was meant
Senator Rubio.
Well, I think the experience is not just what you did, but how it worked out. Under Chris Christie's governorship of New Jersey, they've been downgraded 9 times in their credit rating. This country already has a debt problem. We don't need to add to it by electing someone who has experience at running up and destroying the credit rating of his state. But I would add this. Let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is trying to change this country. He wants America to become more like the rest of the world. We don't want to be like the rest of the world. We want to be the United States of America. And when I'm elected president, this will become, once again, the single greatest nation in the history of the world, not the disaster Barack Obama has imposed upon us.
Senator Rubio, thank you. I do want to bring in Governor Bush on this.
Hold on
because you've
second.
made this.
Excuse me.
If you'd like to respond to economic.
I think he directly mentioned me in my record in there, so I think I get a chance to respond. You see, everybody, I want the people at home to think about this. That's what Washington, D.C. does. The drive-by shot at the beginning with incorrect and incomplete information, and then the memorized 25-second speech that is exactly what his advisors gave him. See, Marco, the thing is this. When you're president of the United States, when you're a governor of a state, the memorized 30-second speech where you talk about how great America is at the end of it doesn't solve one problem for one person. They expect you to plow the snow. They expect you to get the schools open. And when the worst natural disaster in your state's history hits you, they expect you to rebuild their state, which is what I've done. None of that stuff happens on the floor of the United States Senate. It's a fine job. I'm glad you ran for it. But it does not prepare you for president of the United States.
Senator Rubio.
Chris, your state got hit by a massive snowstorm 2 weeks ago. You didn't even want to go back. They had to shame you into going back. And then you stayed there for 36 hours, and then he left and came back to campaign. Those are the facts. Here's the bottom line. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the reason why this campaign is so important. Because I think this notion, I think this is an important point. We have to understand what we're going through here. We are not facing a president that doesn't know what he's doing. He knows what he is doing. That's why he's done the things he's done. That's why we have a president that passed Obamacare and the stimulus. All this damage he's done to America is deliberate. This is a president that's trying to redefine this country. That's why this election is truly a referendum on our identity as a nation, as a people. Our future is at stake. This election is not about the past. It is about what kind of country this is going to be in the 21st century. And if we elect someone like Barack Obama, a Hillary Clinton, a Bernie Sanders, or anyone like that, our children are going to be the first Americans to inherit a diminished country that will not happen.
Governor Christie,
Chris, why don't you mention what the shame is? Get into this. You know what the shame is, Marco? The shame is that you would actually criticize somebody for showing up to work, plowing the streets, getting the trains run back on time, when you've never been responsible for that in your entire life.
Okay.
He didn't want to go back.
And the fact is, I went back, it got done, and here's
something. You didn't want to go back.
I went back. Oh, so wait a second. Is now one of the skills you get as a United States Senator ESP also?
Chris, everybody, you said you weren't going to go back.
The fact is, Marco,
he told everyone he wasn't going to go back, and they had to shame him into going back.
Marco, because...
And then when he decided to go back, he criticized the young lady, saying, what am I supposed to do, go back with a mop?
By the way,
clean up the flooding?
It gets very unruly when he gets off his talking
Thank you, Governor. I will mention you.
It's your record. It's not a talking point. It's your record.
Governor Bush, I'll mention your name so that you can come in on this. And I do want to bring you into this.
Thank you.
I want to bring you in on this because you've made this central to your campaign right here in New Hampshire in the last couple of days. But 4 years ago, you said of Senator Rubio, he was ready to be vice president. You spoke of his experience as well. You said he has the fortitude to be a good president. But just this week, you said Senator Rubio accomplished, quote, nothing in the Senate. How do you square the two?
Well, first of all, he said the exact same thing about me, that I would make a great vice presidential nominee when Mitt Romney was considering. I said the same thing about Marco. I think we were both right at the time, and Mitt picked somebody else. So let's move on to the 2016 race. Who has the leadership skills? Who has the leadership skills to lead? And I'm proud of the fact that I have 12 Medal of Honor recipients, over 30 admirals and generals that believe that I would be a steady hand as commander-in-chief, that I served as governor of the state of Florida, where we cut taxes and reduced government. I took on very powerful interests, forged consensus, fought for my beliefs, implemented them, the state was better off. We had 8 hurricanes and 4 tropical storms in 16 months. The whole state was turned upside down. It required a steady hand. Leadership, you learn this. You learn it by doing it. It's not something that just show up and on the job do it. It's not to say, look, let's be clear. Marco Rubio is a gifted politician. And he may have the skills to be a president of the United States. But we've tried it the old way with Barack Obama, with soaring eloquence, and we didn't get a leader. We got someone who wants to divide the country up. The next president is going to have to forge consensus to bring about a set of common purposes so that we can move forward again.
We're going to continue with leadership now.
What Donald Trump did was use eminent domain to try to take the property of an elderly woman on the Strip in Atlantic City. That is not public purpose. That is downright wrong. And here's the problem with that.
All right, okay.
The problem was it was to tear down. It was to
Jeb
tear
wants
down.
to be. He wants to be a tough guy. He wants to be a tough guy
It was
tonight.
to tear down
I didn't
the
take
house,
the property.
and the net result
didn't.
was you tried.
I didn't
and
take
you
the
lost
property.
in the court.
The woman ultimately didn't want to do that.
That is not true.
And
the
it was
simple
great that
fact
I
is,
didn't.
to turn this into a limousine parking lot for his casinos is not a public use. And in Florida, based on what we did, we made that impossible. It is part of our Constitution. That's the better approach. That is the conservative approach.
Mr. Trump, take 30 seconds.
Let me just, he wants to be a tough guy. A lot of times, you'll have, and it doesn't work very well with
How tough is it to take property from an elderly woman?
Let me talk. Quiet.
How tough is it?
A lot of times, that's all of his donors and special interests out there. So, that's what it is. And by the way, let me just tell you, we needed tickets. You can't get them. You know who has the tickets I'm talking about to the television audience? Donors, special interests, the people that are putting up the money. So it is. The RNC told us we have all donors in the audience, and the reason they're not loving me, the reason they're not loving me is I don't want their money. I'm going to do the right thing for the American public. I don't want their money. I don't need their money. And I'm the only one up here that can say that. Eminent domain, the Keystone Pipeline, do you consider that a private job?
I consider it a public use.
No, let me ask you, Jeb. Do you consider the Keystone Pipeline private? Is it public or private?
It's a public use.
Oh, really? A public use? No, it's a private job.
It's a public use.
It's a private job.
Established by the courts, federal, state
You
courts.
wouldn't have the Keystone Pipeline that you want so badly without eminent domain.
All right, gentlemen,
You wouldn't have massive, excuse me, Josh, you wouldn't have massive factories without eminent domain.
Gentlemen, we do have